Amen. Will you join me in the Gospel of Matthew? We're going to have a little bit of extended Christmas here between Christmas and New Year, and I want to consider just some of the events recorded in the Gospel of Matthew about the birth of Messiah that Luke doesn't mention. We've been spending time in Luke. Very often as a church, we go to Luke during the season of Advent, and this morning I want to consider what Matthew says. Specifically, maybe over the next 20 minutes or so, we'll consider the Magi and Herod. This is in Matthew chapter 2. I'll read the story. For those of you kids who are joining us, this is what we're going to talk about this morning. It's a simple story, and then we'll just make observation that Herod, now this is real, this is history. I'm going to use this to help us make applications to our own life and the reality of light and darkness. Herod was real. Okay, I'm not going to say that over and over again, but he was real. It's history. You can look him up. He's a picture of one who is presented with light, and he's troubled by the light. And instead of moving towards the light, you'll see this in the text in a minute, he's troubled, he becomes secretive, then he becomes deceptive, and then he becomes outright murderous. It's a picture of God making light known and a person moving away from the light. First he's troubled, then he becomes secretive, then he's deceptive, and then he becomes murderous. Contrasted to the Magi, the wise men from the east. Herod is the king, physically, geographically, he's already geographically in the place. Messiah is born less than 6 miles or so from Jerusalem. He's already there, and yet it's these Magi, these wise men from the east, maybe coming all the way from Babylon, 800 to 900 miles away on foot or on camel, and yet they are given light. They see light, literal light from a star. They see a sign in the heavens. They move towards it. As anyone who moves towards the light receives the help of God in seeing more light and being affirmed in their pursuit, they come all the way to Jesus. And when they see him, they fall on their faces in worship, and then they give him their treasure. And then they begin to be used by God to spread this light. So it's a picture of seeing light and moving away like Herod, or seeing light and moving towards and coming all the way to Jesus, finding joy in giving back your treasure. All right, this is Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. May God bless the reading of his word. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And assembling all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophet, 'And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the..." Then Herod summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained from them what time the star had appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word that I too may come and worship him." After listening to the king, they went on their way. And behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them until it came to rest over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. Then opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way. This is the word of God. Herod receives light. The Magi receive light. That's the same. They both receive light. That's the same. And then forever they diverge. After Jesus is born in Bethlehem, this is how Matthew treats the birth of Christ. He's already been born. These are new details that he adds to his telling. He's born in Bethlehem. Bethlehem means house of bread, like granary. Don't think bakery smelling like bread. Think of granary with piles of grain everywhere. In the days of Herod the king. Did you notice when we read how consistently Herod is referenced as the king, the king, the king? There's some irony there. Behold, wise men from the east. These are Magi. Doesn't mean wise men as though they were bookworms who got themselves smart. This is a class of priests. This is like scientist / alchemist / astrologer / priest, all mixed in together. Many of you know the prophet Daniel. Daniel was a chief Magi. Never believed the way that they believed, but he was of that class of people. He was chosen to be one of the king's advisors. Some have speculated that the reason these Magi from the east, it doesn't say they came from Babylon, but not a bad thought. They come somewhere from the east. If it's from Babylon, well, perhaps they're coming because they have passed down the teaching of Daniel, who was the chief of this class of people, these learned people who are looking to the stars for signs from God. Daniel told them that there would be signs in the heavens. I mean, what we record as the prophecy of Daniel came from a man named Daniel who presumably would have taught them to the fellow astrologers. Anyway, there's some irony here that Herod is the king in Jerusalem. He doesn't know about Messiah, even where he would be born. These people who are foreigners from afar, they see light and they move towards it, and they come to Jerusalem. Now, think for a minute. Like, sometimes the Bible, it's easy to just read right over like a stone skipping across the surface that isn't given time to just settle. They have no certainty coming from wherever they have come. If they're coming all the way from Babylon, that's 800 to 900 miles. They could not have made the trip faster than 2 to 4 months. But certainly we know they're coming from somewhere else. The Bible doesn't say there's 3 of them. The Christmas carol that says, "We 3 kings of Orient are," is making stuff up. So if your nativity set has 3 wise men, maybe there were 3. There was for sure more than 1. We don't know if there were 3. We don't know the number. We don't know how many there were. And it seems like they weren't at the nativity scene. So if you want to make your nativity a little more biblically accurate, you may want to take your wise men and just like move them on the other side of the room, or maybe another room. They see light and they move towards it without certainty and without clarity yet. I see in this, if you are one who is responding to light from the Lord in all of the ways that God communicates himself, we would think it kind of outlandish that someone looked in the sky, saw stars, and deduced that God was doing something in the world. And it would seem kind of strange to us that someone would say they had a dream and they smelled Jesus. God is apparently not troubled by such things. Such is his will to make himself known in the world. If you're a person who is seeing light from God and moving towards it, well, you have to follow what you see. You don't have clarity at the beginning, and you don't have certainty, but you move towards the light. Similarly, as you find yourself in relationships with people that you're trying to share Christ with, that you're trying to move towards, there's no pressure on you to have every answer or to share everything at the very beginning. You just begin sharing and let God help a person move towards the light. Anyway, this is what the wise men are doing. They come all the way to Jerusalem. And they say, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." I wonder if they're coming with like a sense of expectation and joy. Where is the king? Where's the one who has been born king? When Herod heard this, now it doesn't tell us how Herod heard. Do you imagine these Magi coming, looking around the capital city? It would make sense if they think in this region of the world a king has been born. It would make sense to go to the capital city. And I imagine they begin to inquire. Somehow word of this gets back to Herod, who's not at all pleased. Look, verse 3, when Herod the king heard this, he's troubled. and all Jerusalem with him. As the king goes, the people goes. Perhaps that's the reference. He's troubled. And assembling all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquires of them where the Christ was to be born. And they tell him what he should have known if he's really the king of these people. They tell him that the prophet Micah, this is from Micah chapter 5, verse 2, maybe verse 4 comes the last line, that Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. Now, I told you Herod is at first troubled, and then he becomes secretive. Verse 7, Herod summons the wise men secretly and finds out from them, when exactly did this star appear? Tell me more about this star. What is this star? And when exactly did you say it showed up? This is one of the strongest pieces of evidence that make it unlikely that the wise men were present at the birth. They saw a star, they come. Later in the narrative, if you read it, Herod decides in his murderous ambition, he decides to have the 2-year-old boys and under, based on what he heard from the Magi. They saw a star somehow, and Herod concluded, okay, let's just really expand the time and make sure we cover it. But it's some length of time. So tell me about this star. When exactly did you say you saw this? He's secretive. And now he just becomes outright deceptive. He sends them to Bethlehem with a lie on his tongue. Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word that I too may come and worship him. Liar, liar, liar. After listening to the king, the Magi go on their way. And behold, well, wait a minute, let's recognize. Here they are seeing a sign in the heavens that a king has been born. They move towards the light without clarity yet and without certainty. They move towards the light and they come to Jerusalem. But what they meet is a deceptive, self-interested ruler. And yet God uses that deceptive, self-interested ruler to give them more light. Okay, so if a person is moving towards the light, you don't have to be afraid that you're not going to get all the right information from all the right people. If you're actually moving towards the light that God gives, God will see fit that you get what you need when you need it. Like, how many of you can look back on your own progression towards understanding Christ, and you can see in hindsight God providing for you what you needed, that when in real time you probably didn't see it that way? So they get from this deceptive king, they get what they need. They get more light. You need to go to Bethlehem. So they begin the trip to Bethlehem, some roughly 6 miles away. There's some irony. Herod is 6 miles away from the birth of Messiah, seemingly no interest in going there. These Magi have come from a long way away with no certainty, less information. Anyway, so after listening to the king, they go on their way. Now, look at God's incredible gift of affirmation and direction. The star that they had seen when it rose went before them until it came to rest over the place where the child was. What that exactly means? Like, how could you discern the movement of a star? They're way up there, and here you are. How could you discern that it went ahead of you 6 miles? Maybe it's not making a geographic point. Maybe it is. God can do what he wants. But maybe it's making a point that the Spirit of God, the power of God to make himself known, continued to go before them. We recite in the Psalms that the Spirit of God goes before us. You hem me in, we say, behind and before. Where could we possibly go from the Spirit of God? Perhaps some way God directs them, guides them, affirms it with the star. Maybe the star reappeared. There's some really interesting theories, some recordings from Babylon at this time that chronicle movement of the stars, 7 BC, that actually make a pretty compelling possibility that maybe this is what the Magi saw. And it was a constellation that was visible and then became revisible and visible again a third time. Maybe that's what's happening. Either way, God is affirming their pursuit, and he gives them another sign. Where God wills for people to see the light of Christ, they will see the light of Christ. They went, and when they saw the star, look at verse 10, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. Isn't it interesting that as people move towards light, they have most of the time more joy, more peace, more contentment? And why is it that as people move away from the light, they become more cynical, more bitter, more angry, more disappointed? Have you recognized this? When you see people responding to light, it seems to have a powerful effect in them as people are resisting the light. Don't you even recognize this at times in the micro, those of you who are already followers of Christ, in the micro, where God reveals something to you in his word, God presents you more truth, and sometimes that truth is troubling to us because we recognize the call of obedience into something we're not really excited to do. And we can be troubled by that. We can move away from that light. You've done this, I've done this. And yet when God gives us more light in his word, and we move towards that light, very often God affirms, God encourages, God deepens our joy, God gives us more peace, God gives us confidence. So they rejoice exceedingly with great joy. And going into the house, they saw the child. Matthew uses this word. This means like toddler. There's a separate Greek word for newborn. This is not the one that he uses. So more evidence that likely Jesus by this time is a small boy. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshiped him. Do you remember when we went through a series of teaching on worship? The most common posture of worship in the Bible is not hands up, face down. They come and they worship him. They fell down and worshiped him. God is making Christ known not to just improve people's quality of life. If you're not sure what to make of Jesus, but you're dissatisfied with what you see around you in this life, and it just doesn't make sense to you that you are the product of an evolutionary process and that when you're over, it's over. If those seem like unsatisfying answers, and you haven't found yet an answer that just resonates with your soul about the inherent meaning of life, or a desire for the future beyond yourself, well, then would you be willing to recognize, the light of Christ is not only to improve your life. Jesus didn't come just so your marriage could be better. Jesus didn't come just so that you'd have a little better relationship with your kids. Jesus didn't come and give light so that you could get yourself out of debt. Jesus didn't come just so you could have a little more meaningful work experience. Like, those are all very small implications of the much larger reason Christ came, to make God known, that all of God's image bearers, all men and women, could become worshipers of God, to find their identity and relationship to him, to find freedom from sin in him. Like, Jesus has come, the light has shone to make worshipers of Jesus. The whole point of the light in moving towards the light is to come all the way to Jesus. And this is what they do. And then notice what happens next. This is really significant. After they come all the way to Jesus, then opening their treasures, they offer him gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. When you see Jesus as your treasure, to hold Jesus in your hands means you got to put down the other things to really possess and hold. But it's like they come with treasure. They see Jesus. They fall down and worship him. And then they just willingly give whatever they treasured. This is a wonderful reality. This is part of what the Spirit of God does in a person who becomes a follower of Jesus and recognizes the supreme worth of Jesus. He's the treasure hidden in the field, so the parable says. He's the pearl of great price. He's the treasure. He's the prize. He is life. There is no greater treasure in all the world, not now, not ever, than Jesus. 10,000 years into eternity, when you have a remade body on a remade earth in which there is no hint of evil, do you know what the greatest treasure will be? Jesus. Ever and always. And when you see Jesus as supremely valuable, then all your lesser treasures you let go. Your wealth, your reputation, your success at work, the well-being of your children, the quality of your marriage, the inheritance you will leave to your kids, your legacy, all of those things are lesser treasures that you just lay at the feet of Jesus. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Long in the history of Christendom have these gifts been thought symbolic. Irenaeus, 180 years-ish after the resurrection of Jesus, was the first whose writing has been found that suggests gold is a gift for a king, for royalty, reflecting Jesus' deity. He is God. Frankincense was used very often by priests in the temple. It's only human beings that offer a sacrifice to God. So Irenaeus saw in the frankincense a gift that reflected Jesus was human. Jesus was a man. He is perfectly God, and he is human. And the myrrh he saw as appropriate for what would be the death of Christ one day, to give life to the world. Now, in history sense, some see in the gifts the offices of Jesus as priest in the frankincense, as king in the gold. I'm not sure. Matthew doesn't say, so it can't be the primary point. But they come bringing him gifts. Do you, follower of Christ, if you number yourself a follower of Christ, have you come to treasure Jesus so much that you find yourself increasingly willing to open your hand on your lesser treasures? Be honest with your soul. Where you recognize lesser treasures that you still hold on to, just recognize that with the Lord. And ask Him, why don't I value Jesus as supremely valuable? Why do I still find treasure in my 401k? Why do I still find treasure that I'm unwilling to open my hand on with my children? Ask Him. And then ask Him to help you value the real treasure rightly. It is to your joy, to His own renown. Being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way. And now God protects them from being used by Herod as a part of his murderous plot, which is recorded 2 paragraphs later. The last thing that I want to show you, I think there is some significance to the gifts that they brought that we see in the prophet Isaiah. Now, we started with this as our call to worship this morning for this reason. This is Isaiah chapter 60, verses 1 through 6. It's a picture yet to be fulfilled in the future, that there will be people from all over the earth that come to recognize Jesus as supremely valuable. And that will be to the joy of those who are already God's people. But it mentions something interesting about the gifts that they will bring. So this is Isaiah chapter 60. Arise, shine. You can follow along on the screen behind me. For your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you. For behold, darkness shall cover the earth, and thick darkness the peoples. But the Lord will arise upon you, and His glory will be seen upon you. And nations shall come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your rising. Now, this has already begun to be fulfilled in Jesus. There are non-Jews all over the world. I mean, most of us are not Jewish. There are Gentiles all over the world seeing the star that has risen, that is Jesus, and rightfully recognizing that Herod is not the king, the current president is not the king, the next president won't be the king. If there's one after that, he or she won't be the king. Jesus is the king. All over the world, people are recognizing that. So this has already begun to be fulfilled in Jesus, but not yet completely. He goes on, lift up your eyes all around and see. They all gather together. They come to you, the people of God. Your sons shall come from afar. I think this means to ethnic Jews. Other Jews, actual ethnically Jewish people, will come to see Christ as king. Today in the world, there are very, 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 very few ethnic Jews who recognize Jesus as their Messiah. One day, I think that number will become a multitude. They'll come from afar. Your sons and your daughters shall be carried on the hip. Then you shall see and be radiant. Your heart shall thrill and exult, because the abundance of the sea shall be turned to you. This is nations, others coming to you. The wealth of the nations shall come to God's people. A multitude of camels shall cover you. I know that doesn't sound exciting, but if you were a nomadic people and you're like, oh, wealth is pouring in, look at those camels, you would be excited. Like for your day and time, it would be like, and Brinks trucks full of money are pouring into your garage. You're like, yes! Okay, but it used to come on camels. A multitude of camels will cover you, even young camels, Midian, Ephah, other places. All those from Sheba shall come. Now, the gifts, the point. They shall bring gold and frankincense. I'm thinking that's more than a coincidence. They'll bring gold and frankincense. What won't they bring? Come on, audience participation. You have three choices. There's gold, there's frankincense, and myrrh. They came with the gold, they came with the frankincense, and what do they lack? Myrrh. Why? Why did the Magi bring myrrh? And why in the future will all those who come to God bring gold and frankincense but not have myrrh? The myrrh gets replaced by what? What does Isaiah say? The praises of God. Because when the Magi came, the king was yet to die. Herod was a pseudo-king. He was not proper to sit on David's throne. He was a half-Jew, placed there by a foreign entity. It's part of the reason he resists the Magi's message, because he wants to hold on to his treasure and his prize. He's not the rightful king. And now the rightful king has come, but he's going to be a king that dies to give life. And so the Magi recognize this, and they bring myrrh. And one day, when our king comes back, and people from all over the world come to bring their treasure to him, there will be no need for myrrh, because the king has already died. The king has already paid for sin. The king has already been resurrected and lives to this day, never to die again. The band is going to come, and we're going to sing a couple more songs about Christ. Will you just take a moment prayerfully now and ask the Lord where the truth has been shared this morning? What would he have you hear? What would he have you receive? God, give us wisdom. Would you cause the truth to fall on fertile soil in us, that we might respond in faith? Just take time in prayer, and then the band will lead us in song in just a moment.